are a lot of things that people get wrong about Harry Potter, and I've done quite a few videos on multiple things that people get wrong about Harry Potter within multitudes of books. So here is a compilation of all of those videos of things that people sometimes get wrong and misunderstand about Harry Potter. So make sure to watch because there's plenty of it, and just put it on in the background, do what you need to do, and enjoy. One of the things that people get wrong in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is the fact that Voldemort is not the most evil character. Dolores Umbridge is the what was that? They already know that Dolores Umbridge is the most evil character in the Harry Potter series? Well, did they know that the reason that it makes her so evil is because she thinks she's good? That's why she's one of the only villain characters who can perform the Patron. What? That's been covered a lot. All right, so scratch that. We're going to talk about something else. There are many things that people get wrong in Order of the Phoenix. Apparently, Dolores Umbridge being the most evil character in the series is well known. But I have 6 other things that people get wrong about Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Do you get these wrong or do you get these right? Let's see. So the first thing that so many people get wrong about Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is the Thestrals. Because they always say, well, he should have seen Thestrals from day 1. Okay, why? Because he saw his mom die, but he didn't. So in the movies, of course, it shows Harry standing in the crib looking at his mother as she dies. But if you actually have read the books, in the books, the description is that she puts Harry in the crib, covers him with a blanket, and then runs out into the hallway. So Harry didn't see her die. So there's one. The other one is, well, he killed Quirrell and Quirrell died in front of him because he murdered him. And it's like, well, yes, he's a reason for Quirrell dying, but Quirrell didn't die of his injuries until the hospital wing where Harry was passed out as well. Quirrell really actually died because Voldemort left his body and his body was very used up. That's why Quirrell was drinking the unicorn blood, because it was sustaining him at least enough to withhold Voldemort within him. Once Voldemort left, Quirrell died. Harry burning Voldemort out of the back of his head probably didn't help, but in the books, Quirrell didn't crumble to ash. So the earliest Harry could have seen Thestrals would be at the end of Goblet of Fire, after he saw Cedric die. But he also technically didn't see Cedric die because his eyes were closed. But I think the loophole in that, and J.K. Rowling confirms, that he just hadn't accepted Cedric's death at that point, and it wasn't until later in that summer when he was facing Dudley that he kind of understood what he had seen and accepted it finally, and that's when he was able to see Thestrals. Because Thestrals don't just magically appear when you see someone snuff it. They do in Hogwarts Legacy. Like, that's one of the scenes in the beginning. It's a flying carriage that is being pulled by nothing, and then the player character sees someone die and, oh, look, Thestrals. They're just a little bit more in touch with who they are and understand death a little bit more than Harry does. Also, there's nothing in the books that really says that they take the carriages back to the trains, so he may not have seen the Thestrals at the end of the 4th book because they didn't take the Thestrals. They just walked back to Hogsmeade Station. So, things to think about. Do you know all of these things that I'm talking about with Harry Potter? Do you get them wrong? Is it just headcanon that I'm spouting out, or is it actual just simple misunderstandings or things in the movies that they got wrong that were different in the books? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you like this kind of breakdown, please like and subscribe and let me know that you want more of these, because I enjoy explaining some of the most obscure things within the Harry Potter universe. So just let me know. Another thing a lot of people get wrong is the trace. The trace. Because what they see as the trace is that when magic is used by the user, if they are under the age of 17, there is a letter on its way to say you've been expelled. But that's not how the trace works. So the way the trace works is almost like a ping. Magic is used near an underage wizard. It pings out. Are there muggles around? No. Are there adult wizards around? No? Okay, then you're using underage magic. Is it just you and muggles? You're using underage magic in front of a muggle. That's even worse of a rule break. Is there a wizard around? An of-age wizard? Is there an of-age wizard around? Yes? Okay, then maybe they use the magic, so we're just gonna let that pass. And then you're probably thinking, well, what about Dobby? Well, number one, magical creatures probably do not show up on that little sensor that they have. Because of course, house elves aren't people. So Dobby uses magic, the ping goes out, all they see is there's an underage wizard, there's magic being used, there's a bunch of muggles. Harry, you're guilty. That's part of the reason why in the Battle of Seven Potters, they're kind of like, hey, we've got to be careful about what kind of magic we use in this house, because the ministry has basically been taken over by the Dark Lord. So we need to be careful to make sure that, they don't come after us because magic's being used. Granted, it didn't stop them in the 5th book, but inconsistencies aside, the trace does not work with if you're underage and use magic, you're caught. One of the things I see the internet talk about constantly about Harry Potter, especially on these podcasts that you have a bunch of people sitting around and go, you know what I don't understand? It's why didn't Dumbledore's army use the Chamber of Secrets as their base? Because only Harry would have had access to it. And it's like, yes, Harry is the only one who has access to the Chamber of Secrets. It also took quite a while for Harry to get to the actual chamber through the cave. So you're gonna, stand in a girl's bathroom and go, all right, go down the slide. All right, go down the slide. Is that everybody? All right, we're closing the doors. We're going down the slide. Now we have an hour hike to the chamber. Because of course you can't use the way to the chamber as a training ground because we saw what happened when magic was used in there. It collapsed. It's not a very sturdy tunnel. And if a bunch of people are going in and out of that tunnel constantly, it's going to get worse. There's probably a small hole just the size of 12-year-old Harry that Ron was able to move of rocks. Granted, they're now more adult wizards and there's more of them, so they could probably move the rocks, but they didn't use one of the secret passageways to Hogsmeade because it had collapsed. So clearly they're not going to use the chamber passage to have heavy traffic go to the chamber to use that. Plus, they had to use Fox to get out of the chamber. So how are a bunch of teenagers going to get out of the chamber if they don't have Fox? Now, on the topic of Dumbledore's army, we need to talk about the Room of Requirements because there are a little bit of inconsistencies on who knows and doesn't know about the Room of Requirements. Dumbledore may or may not know because, of course, if the Fantastic Beasts series is canon, then Dumbledore for sure knows that the Room of Requirement exists. Another theory that I have is that Harry finds the Room of Requirements in Sorcerer's Stone. That's where he finds the Mirror of Erised. And you're probably thinking, no, it was in a disused classroom. And Harry said it looked like a disused classroom, but it was also hard for him to find the door. He was running up and down the hallways with Ron, looking for it, and eventually found it. What do you have to do to access the room requirements? Go back and forth, up and down the hallway, thinking about what you're looking for, and then it appears. That's how it works, is you're running back and forth. And you're probably thinking, well, he found it immediately on the 3rd night that he went. Yeah, because Dumbledore was already there. But that's a mini theory. We're talking about just the room requirements and if Dumbledore knew. We know Dumbledore in the series had a hint of the room requirements because in the Yule Ball dinner scene, when they're talking about magic within the castle, Dumbledore goes, I don't even know all of the secrets of Hogwarts. Just the other day, I was walking up and down the hallway and I realized I needed to use the restroom. And I came across a room full of chamber pots that I had never seen before. And it seems just kind of like an anecdotal story at the time of, there's just a room of chamber pots that I've never found because I've explored this castle so much and just, happened to come across a bathroom for no reason. But it's the wink he gives Harry, like, remember that. Remember that story, Harry. So, of course, we find out in Order of the Phoenix, the room of requirements. And Harry uses that as, hey, look, Dumbledore knows about the chamber, kind of. But Dumbledore knows about the chamber because in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, he uses it twice. He uses it in Crimes of Grindelwald, and then he uses it in Secrets of Dumbledore. So the room of requirements is interesting on if Dumbledore knows or not, based on the canon / based on how deep does Dumbledore's knowledge go of the castle. And was he telling Harry, I know about the room requirements, or was he not? Because if he knows about the room requirements, then the Mirror of Erised being stored in the room requirements and Harry coming across it makes sense. Because what was Harry looking for? He was looking for the Sorcerer's Stone. Where was the Sorcerer's Stone? In the room of requirements with the Mirror of Erised. And that's why, he had been thinking, I need to get away, but I also need to find who Nicholas Flamel is. And of course, because he's thinking of Nicholas Flamel, the Mirror of Erised shows up because it had the Sorcerer's Stone. But since Harry didn't know about the Sorcerer's Stone and wasn't trying to find it at that time, he wasn't unlocking the mirror. Anyway, mini theory within things that people don't understand, the room of requirements. There you go. Talking about understanding and not understanding, we need to talk about divination. Is it bunk or is it all real? So in the 5th book, divination becomes a little bit more front and center because of course, the prophecy is the MacGuffin of the book. So of course, Trelawney becomes a more front and center character, but then she gets ousted from the castle by Dolores Umbridge and we bring in Firenze. Firenze explains the art of divination to be not an exact science. You can't tell the day-to-day minutia of what is going to happen because Mars is in the house of the sun, but you can tell major events. And we've seen major events be talked about throughout the series, such as Mars is bright tonight. It is said multiple times in Sorcerer's Stone, Mars is bright tonight, and is never explained. Or is it? There is a point later on in Goblet of Fire where they are in a divination class and they're doing astrological charts. It's brought up just in the side of Mars is the bringer of war. So if Mars is bright, that means a war is approaching. Because if it's dim, it's going away. If it's bright, and getting brighter means war is coming. And we know there is a prophecy that Harry is supposed to die in the Forbidden Forest. That is why the centaurs are not supposed to save Harry within the forest, because he is destined to die within that forest by the hands of Lord Voldemort. So once Lord Voldemort successfully kills Harry, the centaurs can now intervene and fight on the side of the good wizards and not against the Death Eaters. That's why they shoot their arrows at the end of the book. But the prophecies that Ferenzi explains is divinations is not the day-to-day. But we know Trelawney has made predictions of small details that are actually correct in a manner of speaking. And we talked about this when we talked about Trelawney being a seer and things that people get wrong because people think she is a fraud, but in actuality, she is a seer, even when she's not eyes rolled back in the head predicting prophecies seer, but just little events. She does see small events. She sees Voldemort being born in midwinter with dark hair, thinking it's Harry because they look very similar. She sees Ron going with one of the Patil twins and the Patil twin being upset, so it's beware that the red-headed man, because it's one of the Patil twins going to the Yule Ball and being upset that they're going to the Yule Ball with Ron. She sees Lavender being upset on a specific day, probably saying, oh, she said on this day. So of course Trelawney's going, on this day, the thing you most dread is going to happen. So of course she knows these events are happening. Yeah, little things probably she uses mentalism and is a bit of a fraudster and doesn't realize it, but at the same time she does get most of her predictions correct. But divination as a whole, the way Trelawney teaches it, is false. The way Ferenzi teaches it is real, but he even says you can spend your whole life studying this art and still not get anything right or see anything. Now, on the topic of divinations and prophecies, let's talk about prophecies in general. Prophecies don't have to come true. Dumbledore even says they do not have to come true. I think it's become part of one of those like headcanons of the community that prophecies have to come true, specifically the Voldemort chosen one prophecy. Because Super Carlin Brothers usually kind of in their what if scenarios say, oh, this prophecy has to come true, but it doesn't. Also, one of the bigger things that is talked about and basically discussed is the power the Dark Lord knows not is love. But even Voldemort says, is love. I know love. It's just not really that powerful. The power the Dark Lord knows not is the fact that he made Harry a Horcrux, and that in making Harry a Horcrux, he also made Harry immortal. It doesn't say as soon as Harry is marked as his equal and given the scar on his head that he is immortal and that has power. It doesn't say when he gets the power. It just says the one that the Dark Lord chooses has the power that the Dark Lord does not know. And yes, the Dark Lord knows about Horcruxes, but he doesn't know about this specific Horcrux and how powerful it is. But it's also, what is the mark? We assume the mark is the scar on Harry's head, but in actuality, I wonder if the mark is the fact that Voldemort sees Harry as his greatest enemy because he uses Harry to bring his body back. He says, I don't want to use anybody else but Harry, which in that he is marking Harry as his equal. He's the only person that he thinks is worthy of having his blood, their blood running through his veins, is Harry. So marking him as his equal. And what power does the Dark Lord give Harry by taking Harry's blood and marking him as his equal? The power of immortality and to be able to withstand the killing curse for a second time. That is what the prophecy was speaking of, not marking him as equal and the power the Dark Lord knows not is love. No, Voldemort even says, I know about love. Is it that easy? Okay, that's dumb. It's the fact that Voldemort made Harry immortal and wasn't aware of it. Neither can live while the other survives. Neither can die while the other is still alive because of the Horcruxes. Voldemort can't die while Harry is still alive, but Harry can't die as long as Voldemort is still alive. Neither can live while the other can die. That's what the prophecy. So I usually only do 6 misconceptions, but Super Carlin Brothers literally just this past week posted a video about Order of the Phoenix. And it's an event that takes place in Order of the Phoenix, but it is Lily's blood protection. And that when in the books, specifically the books, when Mundungus disapparates from Privet Drive, causing a bang, Harry jumps up, smacks his head against the window, and then stands up to be choked by Vernon. Vernon then withdraws his hand quickly as though he was shocked. How it's described, if you want to go watch Super Carlin Brothers video, by all means, I may link it up here. Just give them support. I like Super Carlin Brothers, but some of their theories are a little too complicated for my taste. But I enjoy their content, and hopefully we can do something one day if I get big enough. But they were under the impression that Vernon pulled his hand away because of Lily's protection prevented Vernon from harming Harry. Anybody who is not blood related to Harry is unable to harm Harry while within the Dursleys' house. Which, okay, but I think it works specifically towards Voldemort and his followers. And the reason the followers cannot find the house is not because of the blood protection. It's more of all of the other protections that are probably around Privet Drive that these muggles don't even know are protecting them. But I think it's also the fact that Vernon is very much for an image of perfection with his neighbors. And even the narrator describes that there are plenty of people looking out their windows. So of course, if they look out their windows and they see Vernon choking out his nephew, people are going to think, I don't know if that's a perfect family. And that's why he withdrew his hand so quickly, was because his image was being tarnished by the fact that he was abusing a child, not because of Lily's protection. It's a fun idea. I get it. Cool. But I think it's just 100% Vernon Dursley cares about his image and realized what he was doing in front of a bunch of witnesses and withdrew his hand quickly as to not be accused of being an abusive parent. So that's it. I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, it was a new video that they posted and I found fault in it. I think they went for a very complicated answer when it was a very simple answer. Vernon cares about his appearance to the neighborhood. That's it. All right. So that is it. Those are the 7.5, because clearly everybody knows that Dolores Umbridge is the most evil shrew of a woman to ever walk the earth. But let me know. Did you know all of these? Did you get some of these wrong? Did you have some sort of different headcanon? Explain it to me. Let me know. I want to know if I'm getting it wrong, because I don't want to be telling you wrong things. So if you like and subscribe and want more, let me know. And as always, stay marvelous, Nox. From port keys to plans to the Triwizard Tournament itself, there are a lot of things in Goblet of Fire that really don't seem to make sense whatsoever to people who read and watch the series. So today, I'm going to try to take 6 common misconceptions and try to explain them a little bit more in detail on why they actually do work in the series and just things that people get wrong in general. So without further ado, if you like going to more deep dives of the Harry Potter series, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get started. First off, let's do a really easy one. Beauxbaton and Durmstrang are co-ed schools. We're done. That's it. People get that wrong. People think that Durmstrang is male, Beauxbaton is all female. So clearly, if you aren't in the UK and you're a male, you have to go to Durmstrang if you live in Europe. If you aren't in the UK and you're female and you live in Europe, you have to go to Beauxbaton. But that's not actually the case. Really what it is if you're in the northeastern side of Europe, you go to Durmstrang. If you're on the southwestern side of Europe, you go to Beauxbaton. And I also think there's a lot more homeschooling within the Central Europe area, seeing as most of the people that we meet from Beauxbaton are more French, as well as the people from Durmstrang are more German, Hungarian area. Not really sure where Durmstrang is. It's kind of just Eastern European. That's on me. But really, they're smaller schools, so clearly most Central European countries just homeschool their students. They may send them to Hogwarts, Beauxbaton, or Durmstrang, but in most cases, they probably homeschool. It's talked about slightly within the Harry Potter universe that, a lot of parents tend to homeschool. Most people in the UK send their kids to Hogwarts, which is one of the larger magical schools, which seems interesting just with the fact that we've talked about that there's maybe 400 to 500 students at Hogwarts based on how many people per house per year. So clearly, if Hogwarts is one of the bigger schools, then Beauxbaton and Durmstrang can't just take one gender. They are co-ed schools, and that's it. The movies set the precedent, though, that Beauxbaton is all female, Durmstrang is all male, and it got into people's head that they're not co-ed schools when they actually are. And Universal doesn't help with that because in their parks, the Durmstrang are all males, the Beauxbaton are all females. Maybe Universal needs to fix that. Another big thing that people usually talk about is the Triwizard Tournament. Why was Harry magically contracted to compete in the Triwizard Tournament? There's a lot of legal reasons that, like, if this was a contract in real life, then Harry probably would be able to get out of it, such as the Triwizard Tournament is literally for 3 wizards. To add a 4th breaks the contract. It's in the contract that each school gets 1 champion, but Hogwarts gets 2 champions. Also breaks the contract. You also have the fact that Harry didn't physically put his name in the Goblet of Fire. Somebody else did it for him. So that would break the contract. But unfortunately, that's not how magic works. Magical contracts probably fall under the same idea that magical bonds and magical vows fall under. Everybody knows the unbreakable vow. You break it, you die. It's that easy. We don't see anybody die from breaking the unbreakable vow. I think that would have put a lot more pressure on a lot of this stuff, but you have the unbreakable vow. You break it, you die. So thus, unbreakable. But there's other ones throughout the series that nobody really talks about. 2 in particular happen before the magical contract of the Goblet of Fire. Because of course you have the unbreakable vow in book 6, no weird shenanigans in book 5. Then you have the magical contract of the Goblet of Fire in book 4. In book 3, you have the mercy that Harry shows when Lupin and Sirius go to kill Pettigrew, and Harry says, no, with him dead, you're a murderer. With him alive, you're free. And at that point, he saves Pettigrew's life. Pettigrew now owes Harry a life, which then comes into play in the 7th book during Malfoy Manor when Peter Pettigrew is choking the life out of Harry. And Harry goes, you owe me. I saved your life. And Pettigrew relaxes his grip to then reach up and choke himself to death. So it's not exactly the same, but it is a life for a life. He just happens to save Harry's life. The moment he saves Harry's life is the moment that he dies. That's one. The second one is during the 2nd book at the end when Harry frees Dobby. Dobby looks at Harry and says, can I do anything for you? And Harry says, just make me one promise. Never save my life again. And Dobby goes, hell yeah. You know when he saves his life only once. And it's right after Pettigrew lets Harry go. Dobby then apparates Harry and the gang out of Malfoy Manor, away from death, only to die himself. Is it a coincidence that the knife that Bellatrix threw happens to hit him? Or is it just magical circumstances finding their way? Because the unbreakable vow, we don't get told how you die. We don't get told that, oh, if you make an unbreakable vow, then if you break it, you just drop dead. No, it could be like a magical circumstance that, oh, now the universe is out to kill you. You will not survive. Kind of like how Dobby broke his promise. We know house elf magic is a lot more powerful, and we don't know what the magic of the Goblet of Fire is. So the Goblet of Fire could or could not kill Harry, mind you that, and you're probably saying, but why would they kill the contestants of the Triwizard Tournament if they decided not to compete? Entertainment, dear viewer. Pure entertainment. Because what's going to make you compete more? The threat of death or the threat of glory? But you're probably also going to say, but they didn't have to actually build a competition for him. He could have just been like, here, they're going to face real dragons. You're going to face Fang dressed as a dragon. You're not actually going to win because we're going to give you less points because it's a dog dressed as a dragon. All right, and a second task. You're going to jump in that puddle and save Ron from that puddle. But since you didn't go in the lake, you're not going to get as many points. All right, here's the maze. Jump in that bush. There's no cup in there. But see if you can find a cup. You may win. That's not how it works. He has to actually compete. Like, he has to put full effort into, he probably didn't have to put full effort into competing, but if he didn't put full effort into competing, he would have died in the first task. So of course, he has to put full effort into competing to not die, no matter what. But you also could say, what if he slept in? Would he have died? I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have let him sleep in. Dobby came and got him after the second task where he almost did sleep in. But I think if Dobby didn't get him, McGonagall would have. They would have been like, where is our 4th champion? All right, go find him. And they would have brought him in and go, you're going in the lake, boy. That was Flitwick. Flitwick would have said, you're going in the lake, boy. All right. But I think Harry would have had to compete or he would have died, which of course Voldemort didn't want, but we'll talk about Voldemort's plan, which of course Voldemort didn't want, but we'll talk about Voldemort's plan in a little bit. While we're on the topic of the Triwizard Tournament, let's talk about the first 2 tasks. What is their point? I'm always seeing people talk about that. What is the point of the first 2 tasks if the 3rd task is winner take all? And I've seen someone try to explain it in the way that it's based on a point lead that, the cup gives the winner 50 points. So if it's like the first person to get to the cup gets 50 points, the second person gets 25, and the third person gets 10, and the 4th person doesn't get anything. But they never said that. So why are we putting a point value to the cup? It's not the snitch. Because in most rules to challenges, we get explained pretty well how everything works and what the point value is. So I think that idea kind of works. It's like, okay, but it makes it more complicated. Like if Fleur got to the Triwizard Cup before Harry, and then Harry comes up right after her, then Harry would have actually won because he would have gotten 25 points. Well, Fleur got 50, but Fleur was so far behind that Harry would have been up by 5 points or something like that, and Harry would have won the whole thing. But that doesn't make any sense. It's too complicated, and I think it doesn't really work because they didn't explain that's the cup's worth this many points. The first one to get to it, they literally say the first one to get to the cup wins. So it's winner take all. So then what is the point of the first 2 challenges if it's winner take all? Well, it's kind of explained right there. Harry and Cedric are in the lead for points. They get to go in first. Crumb is behind them in points. He gets to go in second. Fleur is in last. She gets to go in last. There's a delay. We don't know how long the delay is. It may be based on the points. Like, hey, you're 15 points behind. You've got to wait 15 minutes. You're 5, or it's just a 5 minute. Like, hey, you get a 5 minute head start. You get a 5 minute head start, and Fleur, you can go. You're probably not going to make it, but go ahead, try. So that was the point of the first 2 tasks. The first 2 tasks test different sets of skills. The winner of those, or whoever does best, gets the most points, which allows them to go into the maze first, which gives them a head start because the maze tests a different set of skills. The first task tested how well you do under pressure when you're facing a dragon. Do you freeze? Can you actually interact with your surroundings, or do you just stand there and get burned up by dragon fire? Cool. The second one, it may not seem like it, but it's a puzzle. You get this egg, you have to figure out what the purpose of the egg is, you have to figure out how it works, and then you have to decipher the riddle within the egg to figure out how to complete the second task. The second task is easy. Swim down to the bottom of the lake, grab your person, swim back up. That's an easy challenge. Of course, people say the second challenge is boring because the second challenge started when they got the egg after the first challenge. The second challenge was about solving the puzzle. Can you solve the puzzle to get to the bottom of the lake? And I've seen a lot of people go, well, you know, how did Harry not know to go to the lake? Because didn't they make an announcement to everybody, hey, go to the lake? And so Neville could have even gone, go to the lake, because Hermione and Ron are at the bottom of said lake, but they may have told them at breakfast. Everybody would have gone to breakfast. Okay, we're going down to the lake today to watch the second task. But of course, Harry slept in and, you know, was in the library. So the point of the first two tasks were to test different sets of skills, where the third task is to test a variety of skills. Okay, you may be able to get past the Sphinx, but can you get past a blast-ended screw? All right, you got past the blast-ended screw, but what about this acromantula? Because you can't take the blast-ended screw down the same way you take the acromantula down. Do you know how to take both of those down? And that's what the important part of the maze is. It's not, can you get through the maze, but it's being able to adapt to different sets of problems. It's to test your magical prowess. And if you get to the end, you win, because clearly you are better than the other ones. And if you have a head start, yeah, it doesn't seem fair, but guess what? You're already good at the other two things, so you're gonna do well here anyway. We might as well give you a head start. And that is the point of the first two tasks, to give you a point base so they can figure out how to get into the maze. And other Triwizard tournaments may have been different. We don't know, because we don't really know anything about the other Triwizard tournaments. If we get more information on it, it might change what the original Triwizard tournament that we see actually stands for and what everything means in it. So this video may be obsolete in like 4 years. Who knows? But right now, the first two tasks determine the order of the entering of the maze for the third task to give the better wizards the head start. You've probably noticed my hat. I like my hat. I just got my hat and it says Marvelous Marauders. It's my hat. It's literally this channel on my hat. And I may start selling merch, but I don't know if the channel is ready for merch. So if you're interested in buying Marvelous Marauders merch, okay, I like it because it's my logo, I designed it, and it's my channel. If you like it, that's really cool, but I want to know what kind of merch you guys would like, because I'm only going to make merch that I want, but I want to know what you guys want. If you guys want merch, that's awesome. Just let me know. If you don't want merch, cool, but I have a hat. I like my hat. And if this is the only hat that ever gets made, cool. I still have a hat. So if you want to see some merch, just let me know in the comments and maybe I'll start looking into trying to make merch for my channel. Let's get back to the video. So now we're talking about the third task. Let's talk about the port key at the end of the maze. So we're taught about port keys. Port keys go one way. You grab on a port key, it takes you to a place, it's done. It's based on timing. I think port keys are a little weirdly complicated because there are some cases where it's like, hey, this is set to send you off at this time, this day. You have to be at this location, have your hand on this item, and it will deliver you to where you need to be. Okay. But we've seen other situations, jumping ahead to Order of the Phoenix, when Dumbledore just makes a port key and goes, here you go, it's going to take you back, just put your hand on it, and it works. He does it twice. He does it in the Ministry of Magic. How does the Triwizard Tournament trophy work as a port key? I think it was always a port key, because we never see a port key be able to take you back. But what if the cup was always a port key that brought you from the center of the maze to the front? Because that's the question that I always had. Not how does the port key bring you from the graveyard, where when you grabbed it, it was in the middle of the maze, you used it, when it brought you back, it brought you to the front of the maze. Why the front of the maze? I think it was always designed to bring you to the front of the maze, and that's why it wasn't suspicious that Barty Crouch Jr. turned it into a port key in the first place, because it was always a port key. It was set to bring you from the middle of the maze, where the port key was, to the front of the maze, holding the trophy, because if you grabbed onto the trophy, it teleports you to the front of the maze, and you're just standing there in front of everybody, holding the trophy. And everybody seemed like, oh, that's normal. He just showed up. That's cool. Nobody was like, how did he do that? No, nobody was shocked by that. It was the fact that he got teleported to the graveyard that kind of messed everything up. So it was already a port key that then got turned into a second port key. So of course it took him to the graveyard first, But when he grabbed it again, it then reverted back to its original port key form and took him back to the beginning of the maze. That's how it was able to go back and forth, because normal port keys can't do that. The timing one, maybe you can set a secondary spell that's like, hey, it's going to go off at this time. So you can set a port key for someone without having to worry about it. But then there's also port keys that as soon as you stick your hand on it, it goes. And we only know about the timing thing because it was a scheduling for the Quidditch World Cup. But maybe it was, hey, the port key's not going to leave without you, which the port key did do that in the 7th book. So port keys in themselves are a little inconsistent, because they talked about how, like, when they were port keying from the different houses of the Order to the Weasley's house, that there were things that showed up without them. But then there's also moments it's like, oh, port keys just work whenever they want. Like, you grab them, it takes you there. But, you know, some port keys will travel by themselves. So maybe you could put time on it. Maybe the ones for the Quidditch World Cup were like, hey, each port key has to come in at a different time to prevent a bunch of people from port keying into the same area at the same time, or, you know, wherever. So make sure you come in at 8:15, or it just goes off at 8:15. And if you didn't grab it, you're gone. But they also talked about how they were they waiting for anybody else before they grabbed the port key. So I think port keys can go off by themselves, but in most cases you have to grab them to activate them. All right, here's the big one. We have one more after this, but let's go with the big one first. Voldemort's plan is way too complicated in this. So let's set you up. He finds out about the Triwizard Tournament. Okay, cool. He then finds out about Barty Crouch Jr. still being alive. Okay, easy enough. Let's go get Barty Crouch Jr. He also finds out from Barty Crouch Sr. that Alastor Moody is coming out of retirement as an Auror to become the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher for Hogwarts. Okay. Then Peter Pettigrew and Barty Crouch Jr. go to Alastor Moody's house, attack him, shove him in his case, take his hair, turn it into a Polyjuice potion. So they've already had to make the Polyjuice potion ahead of time in preparation to this, which takes at least 30 days. So that's a long time, because the Triwizard Tournament took place a week before school started. They already knew they were going to attack Mad-Eye Moody, even though Barty Crouch Jr. technically hadn't been freed yet. So Barty Crouch Sr. couldn't have told Voldemort that Alastor Moody was coming out of retirement. Bertha Jorkins would have had to tell Voldemort, but why would Bertha Jorkins know anything about Alastor Moody coming out of retirement to work at Hogwarts? Because she worked for the Magical Game and Sports Division at the time. So she wouldn't know anything about the going-ons of Hogwarts. Barty Crouch Sr. may have known a little bit about the going-ons at Hogwarts just because he was the previous head of the law enforcement department. So he probably would have been told, yeah, did you hear? Alastor Moody's coming out of retirement to work at Hogwarts. Old sucker. So the timeline kind of works really weird, but maybe Peter Pettigrew produced Polyjuice Potion because just in case he needed it. That's a lot of P's, but let's give him that. Peter Pettigrew produced Polyjuice Potion ahead of time just in case they needed it for some plan. They knew where Barty Crouch Jr. was. They were just waiting for an opportune moment to get to them, and they went and found Barty Crouch Sr., Barty Crouch Jr., Imperioed Barty Crouch Sr., Barty Crouch Jr., and Peter Pettigrew then went to Alastor Moody's house, took him down, and then entered the school. Okay, I'll give you all that. I don't understand how Peter Pettigrew and Barty Crouch Jr. were able to take out a trained Auror, but I'll give you it. Maybe they caught him off guard. Constant vigilance in your old age doesn't really work, does it, Alastor? But still is clearly one of the strongest people besides Dumbledore, seeing as Voldemort goes after him before he goes after Kingsley. But, you know, whatever. One guy who's been Imperious and the other guy who's been a rat for 12 years, they can take out a retired trained Auror who is one of the best Aurors in existence. Okay, right there is the flaw in the plan. But he succeeds, so we'll give it that. Then it's, hey, let's put the name in the Goblet of Fire and make sure that the Goblet of Fire spits out that name. Okay, only a powerful wizard. So clearly Barty Crouch Jr. is more powerful than we expected because he was able to hoodwink the Goblet of Fire, which apparently is very hard to do, and even some of the professors don't believe that it's capable of happening. Okay, the rest of it seems fine. The manipulation of events to make sure that Harry can get through all of the challenges, easy enough. You know, use your broomstick, Potter. Or, I hope he's using gillyweed, because he already knows the connection with Dobby. So I guess the backup for Dobby was Neville, which I guess he did say, hey, I gave Neville the book that you would need. If you had asked him what you had needed, he would have given it to you. And that's why in the movie they were just like, yeah, I have this book, it gave it, just to streamline it, make it look like it makes sense. You know, there's no magical turnip, but there is gillyweed. It worked. It was set up in the book, so it works in the movie. Then the maze makes sense. He can see through. Cool. The plan kind of ends once he gets to the graveyard. It's like, what do we do from here? We got Harry. And there's been theories on, you know, what would have happened if Voldemort killed Harry? Because the whole idea was, hey, we want Voldemort to come back and nobody know, but if Harry never shows back up at the end, what happened to him? And there's the idea, okay, well, they're already using Polyjuice Potion, so they could use Polyjuice Potion to have somebody, whether it be Peter Pettigrew, whether it be Voldemort, take Polyjuice Potion and come back to be able to pretend to be Harry. Honestly, if that theory is true, I would have said Peter Pettigrew, because Peter Pettigrew already knows what he needs to know about Ron and Hermione. He could flawlessly fit in and probably do a pretty good Harry impression. Like, he knows James, so he knows the mannerisms, and he's literally been with Ron, Hermione, and Harry for 4 years. The only one he may not be able to trick is Crookshanks. I'd like a little what if story of, all of a sudden Crookshanks starts hating Harry, and then they find out that Harry was actually Peter Pettigrew the whole time, and it's like, really? Again? First you were my rat, now you're my best friend? Stop it. But anyway, off topic. Voldemort's plan, very complicated, but if you actually break it down piece by piece, it actually does kind of make sense. The only thing that I have a problem with is, how did they take down Mad-Eye Moody so easily? Is Barty Crouch Jr. that good? I don't know, but they were able to, so that's how it works. All right, and the final misconception for today is Voldemort. Just, if you kill Voldemort, does he turn into a ghost? Is the potion that they created for Voldemort to get his body back something that you have to do with a Horcrux? Is that something that you need to know? I don't think so. I've seen where people are like, yeah, no, that's they have to do that magic to be able to bring back his body. And I think that was something he had made in a discovery of things. But I think if you were to walk up to Voldemort and go, Avada Kedavra, he would just look at you and go, were you just trying to kill me? I can't die. And that would have been it. The reason the whole happenstance of him not having a body is not because he died, because they didn't find Voldemort's body after he attacked the Potters. He blew up the house. That was why it was so amazing that Harry survived. The house was in rubble. Harry was buried, but since he was in the crib, it just kind of like protected him. Magically enforced crib, I guess. I don't know. But Harry was protected in the crib with just a scar on his forehead. I think Dumbledore would have been a little less worried if there was just a dead Voldemort sitting there. But there was no Voldemort body, and that's why he thinks that Voldemort isn't dead yet. No body, no crime. That's bottom line, If you do not see them die, it means they're coming back. It's the same thing in comic books, no body, no crime. If you don't see them die on screen, they are not dead. And Dumbledore follows that to the T. I did not see a single Voldemort corpse. He's still out there. And he was right. So, and that's why a lot of people hated how the 8th movie ended, is because, Voldemort just kind of ashes away, where in the 7th book, to confirm that Voldemort is dead, his body's just laying there, which is 100%. I don't think he was supposed to turn into the ghost, but because of the Horcrux situation, his soul could not die, but since his body was completely destroyed, he was stuck. And I think if he knew of this magical potion that would allow him to bring his body back, he would have done that way sooner. He was able to get control of Quirrell, so of course he would have probably been able to do the same idea, because even Peter Pettigrew says, Master, we don't have to use Harry, we could use anybody as your enemy. So clearly he could have done that from day one. He could have immediately found one of his followers who were probably around and been like, oh, I need a body, and then they could just grab someone off the street who's still afraid of Voldemort and go, yeah, we're gonna use your blood and bring his body back. I don't think he would turn into a weird soul spirit thing in every occasion. I think that was a small caveat to the fact that he had lost his body in the explosion with the backfire of the curse. If you had walked up behind him and said Avada Kedavra, he probably would have turned around and punched you in the face and then Avada Kedavra you. But because it's explained with the Horcruxes, if you were to run Ron through with the sword, you would harm his body but not his soul. The same thing would happen with running the book through with the sword, except for the Sword of Gryffindor. It would have hurt the diary but not hurt the soul within it. The soul would still be intact. So the same thing would happen to Voldemort. If you ran him through with a sword, not the Sword of Gryffindor, but just with a sword, he would have just stabbed into him and he would have pulled it out and gone, was that supposed to hurt? And then Avada Kedavra you. But the Sword of Gryffindor would have killed him. I think the Sword of Gryffindor would kill anybody because of the basilisk venom, but the Sword of Gryffindor would have killed Voldemort. A normal sword would have just poked a hole into him and then he would have been able to heal himself. That makes sense. The ghost form of Voldemort is a byproduct of the explosion, not because he died. If he dies, his body still stays alive. He doesn't lose his body fully, because if that were the case, there would have been research on, hey, be careful if you use a Horcrux, because if you die, you turn it into an angry soul thing, and you have to use all this stuff, so you need to make sure you have someone who's on your side to have a potion ready for you to jump in if you die when you get into a dangerous situation. Which Voldemort, being who he was, would have had that if that were the case. So to those who think that Harpo the Foul, who created the Horcrux, also created this potion, he may have, but it's not something that was in the books because it was not something that he had to use. Nobody knew if that potion worked, so it was just kind of like, all right, it may work, we don't know. So hope that answers that question. Is Ghost Voldemort was just an unfortunate byproduct of the explosion of the Potter's home and is not a normal circumstance for a Horcrux. A normal Horcrux, as long as your body is not destroyed, you just survive. But since Voldemort's body was completely incinerated, he had to find another way to survive. And as always, no body, no crime. All right, that's the 6 misconceptions that a lot of people seem to get mixed up or wrong, or just ask a lot of questions on how it works, but never actually get them answered. So hopefully that answered those 6 questions for you. If you like these deep dives, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, stay marvelous. Knox.
Good news! I have merch now. This is a good representation of the merch that I have, but this is a prototype. But if you check the link in the description, and I will have a link somewhere on the screen showing off the merch that we have. Perfect for a gift for people who like this channel, but make sure to check it out, like and subscribe, and let's get back to the videos.
Today, we are going to be talking about 6 things that you are probably getting wrong when it comes to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This is 6 common misconceptions that people usually put as plot holes, and we're going to talk about how they're not actually plot holes, and you're mostly wrong about why you think this doesn't work in the story. So the 6 things we are going to be talking about today is time turners and how they actually work. This is going to be really complicated. That's why it's the first one. Why Hermione couldn't use the time turner to do more intense things like stop Voldemort. Why Peter Pettigrew couldn't change without a wand, but Sirius could. Why the twins didn't see Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map. Is Trelawney truly a fraud? And why the Dementors loved Harry. Did they though? Those are the 6 things we are going to be talking about today. So make sure to stick with us, and we will start now. So first off, let's talk about time travel. It's complicated, I know. So I'm going to try to simplify it as much as I possibly can. And we just got to remember, the Harry Potter Prisoner of Azkaban time travel is in itself its own style of time travel. You have Looper, you have Back to the Future, you have Avengers Endgame. There's all sorts of different time travels. It's used so much in modern media. Sometimes I joke that if a story gets into time travel, it's the jump the shark moment of media. But most of the time it really works if you follow your rules that you set up, which Prisoner of Azkaban sets up rules and it follows those rules. Prisoner of Azkaban mainly follows the bootstrap paradox, though, which is it happened because it happened. There's no, hey, this is where it starts, this is where it ends. The idea of the bootstrap paradox is, say, it's explained really well in Doctor Who, so I'm going to try to explain it a little bit. You go back in time because you're a fan of Beethoven. You take sheet music of Beethoven and go back and go, I'm going to have Beethoven sign my music. So you go back and nobody knows who the hell Beethoven is. So what do? Well, you have Beethoven's music with you. There's no Beethoven, so you in turn become Beethoven himself. The paradox in that is who originally composed the Beethoven music. So in Prisoner of Azkaban, people are like, well, they could have changed, they were changing time, but we hear that it's not. No, that's not how it works. The events that happened in Prisoner of Azkaban always happened. Buckbeak always was taken by Harry and Hermione. Sirius always got away. That is why Dumbledore knew what was happening before they went back the first time. We say the first time, but that's what we see. But it's a constant loop, and Dumbledore was aware of it. We don't know how much Dumbledore was aware of and what he knew, but he knew Buckbeak went missing, knew Hermione had a time turner, and probably put 2 and 2 together of, Hermione has a time turner. I sent them back in time to save Buckbeak, who was innocent, to save Sirius, who is also innocent, so then they can both get away. It always happened. Dumbledore always knew. Dumbledore put them in the time and said, hey, we got to get back at this time, or bad things are going to happen. Not that time is going to be broken, but I need to time this out, so when Sirius is missing, you're not going to get blamed for it. So that is what happens. It is more of a predestination, which then it calls into question, free will, is that real? We're going to push that to the side. We're not talking about free will, but the time turners don't change time. They can't change time. They only create a almost paradox that is always happening. This time loop is always happening. It's not, hey, I'm here living my life, and then you decide to go back in time, and now there's 2 of you. No, there were always 2 of you at that point from when you went back to the end of time, 4th dimensionally speaking. But it is always something that is happening, never something that hasn't happened. I hope that clears it up and isn't even more complicated for you. But the bottom line with this is you cannot change time with a time turner. And I'm sure there's a little asterisk there of comments of people going, but Cursed Child, and what I'm going to say to you is, but Cursed Child is not canon because it does not follow the rules of time turners. Bottom line, it's a totally different universe because it doesn't follow the rules of those time turners. Right there, it shows this is not the same universe because this is not how time turners work. There's rules with time turners. You can only go back 5 hours or bad things happen. You can probably go back further, but the problem with going back further is magic wears off. It's a magic thing. Magic fixes the paradoxes. If you go back in time further, if you build a time turner that goes back in time further, magic can't fix it and bad things happen, which I guess follows the rules in Cursed Child based on the rules of Prisoner of Azkaban. But in the end, I don't see Cursed Child as canon. Those time turners don't work the same way. It's de facto not canon. So now that we explain the basics of time travel, let's explain why Hermione could not go back and stop Voldemort. Well, we've already kind of explained the time turners can only go back 5 hours. They have a restriction on them that only allows them to go back 5 hours. Cool? Cool. You cannot change time. We've already talked about it. It's one of those things, what has happened has happened. But think about it in the way of there's an event where Voldemort kills Harry. Okay? Voldemort kills Harry. Hermione says, ooh, let me go back in time and prevent Harry from dying. Uses the time turner, goes back in time. She cannot prevent Harry from dying because she has already seen Harry die. Harry has died. It's the catalyst that has put her back in time. The reason they can save Buckbeak is because they only think Buckbeak is dead. Buckbeak never died. If they had seen Buckbeak lose his head, Buckbeak's lost his head, the game is over. You can't save Buckbeak. It's because Buckbeak didn't actually die. They just thought he had died. So then they didn't realize, oh, we can save him. That's, I think, where the confusing factor is, oh, well, they saw Buckbeak die. They didn't see Buckbeak die. They heard the sound of the axe thudding, assuming that the axe was chopping off a head and hitting the ground. But what it was McNair using the axe to hit a pumpkin, which sounds viscerally like a beheading. So they thought Buckbeak had died. Buckbeak never died. The movie makes it even more complicated with, the crows flying off, and you don't really see a lot of the notions that there's someone there when then you find out, oh no, that was Harry. Harry kind of figures it out. Like, oh, I knew I could cast the Patronus because I had seen myself casting the Patronus. So what has happened will always happen, has always happened. If you didn't understand my first breakdown of it, hopefully this is even simpler with this theory. So Hermione could not stop Voldemort with the time turner unless he didn't do it in the first place, which means she wouldn't have gone back in time to stop him from doing it because it never happened. Got it? I hope you do. It's complicated. I get it. You're probably frustrated. You're going to probably have to watch this multiple times. I hope you understand. Now let's move on to something a little bit simpler. Why was Sirius Black able to transform into his Animagus form without a wand, but Peter Pettigrew could not change out of his Animagus form without either the help of Remus and Sirius or a wand himself? Well, with this, we have to get into more of the in-depth Pottermore explanation of the Animagus forms. So when you first become an Animagus, yes, you need your wand. You have to store your wand away to be able to transform later because you need your wand. But as you become more adept in your Animagus form, you are able to change at will. More practiced wizards can change at will because we've also seen Professor McGonagall can change her form at will. We've only seen it twice in the series. As a whole, more powerful wizards don't need wands. What do we know about Peter Pettigrew? He's not a strong wizard. He always needed help with his transformations from Sirius and James and Remus, and that's why he was able to change himself into his Animagus form with his wand, but then was not able to change out. I'm sure if Molly, Arthur, or one of the Weasley kids left the house without their wand, he probably used it so he could lounge around on the Weasley's couch without them when they're not there. But for the most part, I think he was stuck in a rat form. And he was stuck in a rat form for so long, he started to become just a rat. More than he already was, because he was a rat in the colloquial term of a snitch. But Peter Pettigrew was a weak wizard, and that's why he needed a wand or help to return to his human form or back to his rat form, where Sirius and McGonagall can just change it well. I hope that clears that up a little bit. Now for one of the more contested misconceptions that I see all over the internet. Why didn't Fred and George see Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map when he was sleeping in bed with Ron? They never questioned, Ron, what are you doing with Peter Pettigrew? Wait, wasn't that guy who got murdered by Sirius Black? Like, how is he in your bed? Let's break it down a little bit. The map has small writing. One of the first things Harry remarks on in Prisoner of Azkaban is The writing is very small, and it takes a second for him to even find himself on the map, knowing where he is. Number 2, there are a lot of people in Gryffindor, probably about 70 to 80 people in 2 dorms that are spiral stacked on top of each other. So while they're in bed, all you're going to see is a jumble of names that you're probably not going to be able to read very clearly, unless you're looking for something specific. Number 3, Fred and George got the map in their first year, within a couple weeks. So if anything, they would see Peter Pettigrew in Percy's bed before they would see it in Ron's bed. So the question is why didn't they see Peter sleeping with Percy? Well, the point still stands, Gryffindor Tower. Yeah. But how many older characters do we meet later on that we're like, how long? You're who? Cormac McLaggen. I've never heard of you. How are you in the same house and you've never heard of someone? Yes, Fred and George are popular. Everybody knows who Fred and George are. But I bet you there's probably some 6th, 7th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 4th years, whatever, in Fred and George's first year that they did not know. They probably don't know everybody's name. So of course, they're not going to be like, oh, Peter Pettigrew. Why is Percy hanging out with some kid named Peter Pettigrew? They probably just think, oh, it's another kid in the dorm. They're also not looking at Percy, especially first and second year. They're not going to look at Percy. He's not a prefect. He's not a prefect until their 3rd year, which is Harry and Ron's first year, which at that point, if they're looking for Percy, guess what? He's not with Scabbers. They're not going to be looking for Ron either. Who they're going to be looking for are the people who are going to get them in trouble. So they're probably looking for Snape, looking for McGonagall, looking for Filch, looking for Mrs. Norris. They're not going to be looking at Percy or Ron to figure out where they are. Plus, by Fred and George's 3rd year, I doubt they're really using the map that much. By Fred and George's 5th year, they're probably not even using the map much, because why? They know where all the secret passages are. They know how to evade Filch. So that's why they pass it down. So clearly, they're not using the map that much. They're just like, this, it's not getting any use. You can use it, and Harry uses it. They unwillingly knew that they were giving it to the original creator's son, but the complex idea that, oh, you can't see Marauders on the Marauders map unless you are a Marauder is just too complex. It's a lot simpler than that. Nobody cared who Peter Pettigrew was, and Fred and George didn't pay attention to their brothers in the dorm rooms because they were probably off doing something else, paying attention to Argus Filch, Dumbledore, Snape, McGonagall, the people who are going to get them in trouble. So, bottom line, it's a lot simpler than the complex theory of the map is sentient and knows who's reading it. They probably did have a charm that prevented Severus Snape from ever being able to use it, but he was able to use it because he saw on the open map that Lupin forgot to close, how dare he, where Lupin was going and where Sirius and the trio were going. So clearly Snape can use it. It just insults Snape because it's also slightly sentient when he goes, I, Professor Severus Snape, master of Hogwarts. And they're like, pretentious. And a little bit bonus misconception, the way that Fred and George probably found how to get into the map is the map clearly can tell who's using it in some sort of way, and they were probably poking around, and it probably gave them riddles that kind of helped them figure out that all you have to say is, I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. And then it probably also said, once you open it, hey, how do you close it? And it probably popped up somewhere, mischief managed, because it does give passwords to the secret passages. So it would make sense that it would also try to help someone properly trying to use it who is not Snape. So hopefully that clears things up. Let's move on to the next one. Professor Trelawney is not a fraud. She seems like it. Yes, I get it. Like throughout the book, she seems like a fraud. There are points where she even probably thinks that she is a fraud because she's clearly an alcoholic and worried that, people are going to think I'm a fraud. But what if I told you everything that she predicted came true? Yes, she probably does use a little bit of fraudster mentalism to try to make it seem more grandeur, but in most predictions that she makes, she's 100% mostly accurate. She may have the subjects mixed up. For example, she looks at the Patil twin that's in her class and says, beware of a red-headed boy. Well, she probably saw an image of someone who looks like her with Ron Weasley, and someone who looks like her was having a bad time. Someone who looks like her having a bad time with Ron Weasley in the 4th book. In their 4th year, when they go to the Yule Ball, Ron goes with her sister, who looks exactly like her, and has a bad time. So beware a red-headed man. It came true. Looks at Lavender. The thing you most dread will happen on this date. What she probably saw was on that date somehow, or them having the conversation, oh, the thing I most dread will happen on this date. Trelawney was right. Her crying. That's what Trelawney probably saw. So knew the date, knew the thing she most dread. Didn't know what she was dreading, just saw her crying, saying I dread it, saying this is the date. So Trelawney says, this is the date. You will most dread something, and you'll be very upset. Correct. Now, the fraudster in her Neville Longbottom, is your gran well? What's wrong with my gran? Neville goes. And then now he's already nervous. She can tell he's a nervous Nelly. I don't like your gran, number one. I've met her before. She's kind of a shrew. I have a headcanon that Trelawney and Augusta Longbottom have a history outside of Hogwarts where, they don't get along. So she's like, ooh, Longbottom, is your gran well? And of course, Neville, being the nervous Neville that he is, gets nervous-er. And when he's going to get the teacups, she goes, don't drop one. I like that color. Once you drop it, please get the other color. And of course, now Neville's in his head. He's like, oh, my gran's sick. Oh, I don't want to drop this. Oh, I dropped the cup. Oh, dang it. Mentalism. She made him drop the cup, knowing that he was nervous. So that one, fraudster, looks at Harry. You were born in midwinter. Because probably in her head, what she sees is a dark-haired boy born in midwinter. Because, of course, she has that connection with part of Harry's soul. Her power connects with that. But she doesn't see Harry. She sees Tom when he's born. When is his birthday? Anybody? January 31st, midwinter. So she's not wrong. She's just seeing the wrong person and getting it mixed up. She walks into the dining hall during Christmas and says, oh, I can't sit here. That'll make it 13. And then the first one to stand up dies. But what we don't know is there's already 13 at the table because there is a rat in Ron's pocket. And who stood up first? Anybody? Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Brian, Dumbledore. And guess who dies at that table first? Alfred? Yeah, Alfred dies. And guess who dies first? Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Brian, Dumbledore. It's a couple of years down the road, yes, but out of everybody at that table, he's still the first one to die. There's another moment, too, that it does happen again. Harry's 17th birthday. There are 13 at a table. A weasel shows up and says, the minister is coming. And two people get up, Remus and Tonks. And who are the first ones to die out of that group of 13? None other than Remus and Tonks. That one wasn't predicted by Trelawney, but the point still stands that she said, when 13 dine together, the first one to rise will be the first to die. And she's not wrong. Also, in the 6th book, she's walking down the hallways playing with tarot cards, and she predicts that there's a boy who has troubles with the reader. And she's like, ha, that's not true. I misshuffled. Nope. You could sense with your tarot cards that Harry was hiding from you. She also has a vision of the lightning-struck tower and knows something bad is going to happen. And then what do we have? We have the dark mark at the tallest tower, looking almost like lightning striking the tallest tower. And what bad thing happens? Because she says the lightning-struck tower means something bad is going to happen. And what bad thing happens? Dumbledore dies. She not only predicts Dumbledore's death once, but she predicts it twice. So there you have it. Professor Trelawney is not a fraud. She is a hustler and uses her gift, but she also uses mentalism and being able to read people to further her grandeur and make it seem as though she is even more all-seeing than she pretends to be. But she does have the gift of a seer. Not only does she make prophecies through the ether into her that are projected out of her, but she makes small predictions. Because clearly divination is real. We know from the centaurs that it's real. They cannot involve themselves with Harry in the Forbidden Forest because they know he is meant to die in the Forbidden Forest to end the upcoming war. That is why they got mad at Firenze, for saving him. You know you're not supposed to save Harry in the woods. That's the one thing that we know that we cannot do. We cannot interfere with the war until this prediction has happened. And once it happens and Harry's dead, guess who comes to the aid of the Wizards of Hogwarts? The Centaurs. They help fight the final battle because the prediction has come forth. The war is about to end. Harry has died in the woods like he was predicted to 7 years earlier. So, what do you think? Is Trelawney a fraud or is she not? Let me know. And finally, the misconception that so many people get. It's one of those little fan theories that has grown so big that people just kind of see it as headcanon or just canon in general. The Dementors like Harry because he's got an extra juicy soul. It works. But Dementors feed off of emotion. They feed off of trauma. They want the juicy trauma. They want you to be in agony. They want to feed off the happiness and then feed off your juicy agony. So yeah, Harry has an extra soul, but it's not because he has an extra soul that makes him so juicy, but it's not because he has an extra soul that makes him so appetizing to the Dementors. It's because he's got 2 orphans of trauma built up within him. And if you want more information about the orphan trauma that he goes through, I did post a theory last week. Go check it out. It talks more in depth about why Harry sees what he sees when he's with the Dementors. The Dementors don't truly just go after him. Yeah, they have a higher effect on him, but they just want to feed, and Harry's trauma is delicious to them. He also just seems to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and because he's affected by the Dementors so badly, it seems as though, oh no, the Dementors just want him. But there's never any evidence that the Dementors are coming after him directly, ever. There's never a moment where it's like they're flying to two people and they go to him. Because in Order of the Phoenix, when he is attacked by the Dementors, one Dementor attacks Harry, one Dementor attacks Dudley. But Harry is able to fend it off with a Patronus, where Dudley isn't. So there's no proof that the Dementors specifically target Harry, ever. It affects Harry because of something within him, but it's not because he has something within him that the Dementors go after him. Because in the Quidditch match, there were just a lot of Dementors, and they kind of affected everybody, but Harry was on a broom and is affected worse by the Dementors, so he fell off his broom, where most people could relatively function. On the train, the Dementor just saw a bunch of people and probably can also sense guilt. So you have Peter Pettigrew hiding in there, and it's like, someone is guilty in here. I want it. And then Remus sees that Harry is having a reaction to it and is like, yeah, get out of here. We're not hiding Sirius Black under our cloaks. Get the hell out of here, Dementors. So Dementors aren't going after Harry because he has an extra juicy soul. Harry is just affected more by the Dementors, so it seems as though they're going after him. But there is never a moment in the books where they are specifically targeting Harry indirectly. Because in the fifth book, they are specifically targeting Harry because they were ordered to specifically target Harry. But even then, one's attacking Dudley while the other one is attacking Harry. So there is still no evidence showing that, oh, Dementors just really love Harry's extra juicy soul. So hate to break that headcanon for you, but that's it. Harry's not special. Well, he is special, but he's not special to Dementors. So that's it. All right, there you have it. Six things that you were probably getting wrong, and hopefully you will get right now. Hopefully I'm not going to see a bunch of TikTok videos of people going, time travel doesn't make sense in Harry Potter, because they could have changed time the entire time in the series because of time turners. No, that's not how it works. You can't change time with time turners. You can't see Peter Pettigrew in the bed with Ron. I mean, you can, but Fred and George weren't looking for it. Fred and George weren't going to notice it. It took Ron a couple minutes to realize, oh, Peter Pettigrew, I know that story. Because he was like, I didn't know that. But then he goes later and goes, yeah, no, I remember that. All he got back was his finger. Because he had to think about it for a while, and he kind of jogged his memory. But if he had just seen the name Peter Pettigrew, he'd have been like, oh, I guess it's a first year that I've never heard of. I don't know. I never went to the sorting ceremony. They miss it half the time, so they don't know who the first years are. Maybe it'd been a seventh year. Who knows? So let me know what you think. Did I get stuff wrong? Did I not explain it well enough? Do I need to do a whole video on just time travel in media? Because I will. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we will see you next time. Make sure to stay marvelous, Knox. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Marvelous Marauders. Today, we are diving into some of the biggest misconceptions surrounding Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets that you might have heard of over the years. Whether you're a longtime fan or just revisiting the series, these are things you might have gotten wrong, and I'm here to clear them up. We've got 6 misconceptions to tackle, so let's get started with the first one. All right, first up, let's talk about the trace. A lot of people think the trace is a magical signature on underage wizards that allow the Ministry to detect when they use magic. But that's not actually how it works. The trace doesn't track wizards. It's not like a GPS locator like, oh, there's an underage wizard. Oh, he just used magic. Send him a letter. No. It just detects the magic in the area around. It's kind of like a little radar like, ooh, magic was used. Oh, look, there was magic used around that underage wizard. Let's see. If an underage wizard is alone and magic happens, he's by himself. Send him a letter. The Ministry assumes he did it. But if an adult wizard is nearby, like, ping, magic was used. There's an adult wizard there. All right. The Ministry can't tell who cast the spell, so it doesn't send a warning. Like, they're not going to send a letter to the Weasleys. That's why the Weasley kids could use magic at home without getting in trouble. Not that they did. The Ministry would just assume, Molly and Arthur are probably the ones casting the spells. This is also why Harry got blamed for Dobby's hover charm in Chamber of Secrets. The Ministry detected the spell in his house and assumed, he's the only wizard there. He must have cast it. So we'll send him a letter. The trace most likely does not sense creatures that do magic, just wizards, because of course the ministry is racist. But we know that. So the trace isn't perfect. It's just based on location, not direct connection to the person. That's how Tom Riddle was able to use Morphin's wand and kill his own parents, and Morphin got in trouble with it. Next up, let's talk about Arthur Weasley. A lot of people think Arthur doesn't really understand Muggle things. After all, the first thing he asks Harry is, what exactly is the function of a rubber duck? And he struggles with Muggle money. But the truth is, Arthur is actually much smarter than he lets on. Arthur isn't confused by Muggles. He's fascinated by them. He works in the misuse of Muggle artifact office. He's enchanted a car to fly and even repaired Sirius Black's motorbike. His questions about Muggles aren't because he doesn't understand them. They're because he wants to learn more. Also, some of his confusion is just him being polite. When he asks Harry about things like escalators, he's likely just trying to make conversation, and he doesn't know what Muggles are interested in. He's just like, I've seen these escalators. And for Harry to, feel a little bit more special and be like, no, Mr. Weasley, it's not escalators, it's escalators. They're just moving stairs. They just move up and down, not like in Hogwarts where they'll just move from one end of the hallway to the other. But it's also to make the Muggles feel more comfortable. He is trying to talk to the Dursleys, maybe sounding a little stupid, so they're not like, this wizard, I'm intimidated. No, it's more just to, hey, what is this? I collect plugs. You like plugs? It's just, he's trying to make conversation and, doesn't know what social norms are for Muggles. We also see him in the Ministry of Magic talking to Kingsley, and this is one of the clues that shows that he actually knows what he's talking about. Kingsley goes, yes, I need to get you my fire legs report. And Arthur immediately goes, no, it's called firearms, not fire legs. Like, come on, do better at your job as an Auror. Know what weapons are. But it's when we finally see Arthur in his actual, natural habitat, he's not pretending to be a goofy duddard. He's good at his job. In the Harry Potter films, the basilisk appears absolutely massive, leading a lot of people to wonder, how did it fit in the pipes? Like, how big are the Hogwarts sewage pipes between the walls that a giant 6-foot wide snake can fit through them? But there's a few explanations. One possibility is that the pipes are magical and can expand when needed, or the snake can expand or contract so it can fit through different pipes. Magic can defy physical limitations. So the idea that the basilisk can pass through enchanted plumbing or is enchanted in himself to fit through the plumbing isn't far-fetched. But partially why I think the basilisk may change its size is because in the movie, the few scenes that we see of it, it isn't overly consistent on how wide it is. So it might have some ability to shrink or grow, depending on its surroundings. But the most realistic answer and simple answer is that in the books, the basilisk follow real snake proportions. So reticulated pythons, one of the longest snakes in the world, grow up to about 32 feet with a diameter of about 2 feet wide. If the basilisk is around 50 feet long, it'd likely be closer to about 3 feet in diameter, far smaller than the exaggerated version that's way up here. So if it's about this wide, it could probably fit in pipes. Just saying. There's probably, I guess, floor drains that it can fit through, but it's up to you to think. Is it magical pipes, magical shape, size changing snake, or is it just a little bit smaller than what the movie depicts it as? Up to you.
Another big question that's asked is when the students start getting petrified, some fans wonder, why didn't Hogwarts just get like mandrakes from St. Mungo's? Why did they have to wait for their own to mature, which took 8 months? Well, the plot answer is because if we immediately unstunned all the people, they would have just been like, yeah, it was a giant snake and Ginny was standing next to it. And the problem would have been solved. That's no fun. But in universe, we'll try to answer it. Mandrakes are rare and difficult to cultivate. Hogwarts isn't just a school, it's also probably a major magical supplier of ingredients. I mean, you've got care of magical creatures, which, you know, we already know that Hagrid has the only domestic herd in London or in the UK of Thestrals, but there's multiple greenhouses. So St. Mungo's probably gets a lot of their like magical plant-based ingredients from Hogwarts. They've got a major greenhouse and they've got a ton of free labor. That's probably what keeps the school going, is they just sell all of this stuff to make some money to keep the school running. And it does take a long time. So if they supply to St. Mungo's, there's probably a small supply that is at St. Mungo's for maybe one, but Dumbledore probably assumed, hey, let's wait till these mature so we have plenty of mandrake leaves just in case we have more petrification. Because mandrakes take a while to fully mature. So there's no guarantee that St. Mungo's would have what is needed. Also, it may take a lot of mandrake leaves to make the petrification potion, so they don't want to take the full supply that they have at St. Mungo's just in case something else happens and they need it. We don't know. Probably wasn't an oversight. It was probably a necessity on why it took so long. Now, let's talk about everybody's favorite character, Gilderoy Lockhart. Some people believe that Dumbledore only hired him because, you know, no one else wanted the job of the Defense Against the Dark Arts position. I mean, the last teacher literally died. I don't think people were wanting to go work at Hogwarts. Like, yeah, that's a no for me, dog. That last guy died. Like, come on. But I mean, we even hear from Hagrid that it's like, yeah, he was the only one for the job. He's the only one who applied. So it's kind of like, did Dumbledore have a different reason on why he hired Lockhart? Because throughout the series, throughout the book, we do see multiple instances where it's like, okay, some of the professors kind of hint that they know Lockhart is a fraud. So it's assumed if McGonagall and Snape know that Lockhart is a fraud, then Dumbledore probably knows and told them. But he hired him not out of desperation, probably a little bit out of desperation, just because he's like, I need someone, so we'll just put him in here, but I can also use it to my advantage. By putting him in a teaching position, Dumbledore knew that Lockhart's lies would catch up to him. Lockhart, on the other hand, probably saw it as the perfect opportunity to increase his fame. You know, he's got all of these admiring students who are like, wow, you're that teacher who did a bunch of stuff and put it in books. Oh, my book list is I have to buy all of your books. I mean, come on, what better way to increase book sales than have 400 students buy all of your books? That's great. But in the end, his incompetence became very obvious. Leading to his downfall, Dumbledore probably didn't hire him because he had no choice, but to make sure that Lockhart fell upon his own sword, as he says himself. Because Dumbledore had friends who were used by Lockhart So he wanted to make sure that Lockhart wouldn't do it again. And it maybe ended a way that Dumbledore didn't think it would end, but Lockhart got his comeuppance. Finally, let's talk about Lucius Malfoy. Many people assume he works at the Ministry, especially since in the scene in Flourish and Blotts in the movie, when Draco says, "See you at school," and then Lucius goes, "See you at work." It kind of makes it seem like he works at the Ministry. But Lucius Malfoy doesn't have a job. He's a stay-at-home dad who's having empty nester syndrome. Lucius doesn't work. He's wealthy and uses his money to influence the Ministry from the outside. This is all stuff that we do hear reading the books. I think it's mostly because of the movies. He donates to politicians, bribes officials, and makes sure laws favor pure blood families like his own. He was on the Hogwarts Board of Governors, but that wasn't really a job. It was just another way for him to wield his power so he can control what the students learn. And he only really wanted to be on there because Dumbledore ticked him off by not removing one of the stories from Tales of Beedle the Bard. These notes are actually in Tales of the Beedle the Bard that were translated, and one of the notes was that Lucius Malfoy tried to get a book about muggles marrying wizards banned. But Lucius's real influence comes from his wealth and connections and not a Ministry position. So, there you have it. 6 common misconceptions from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets debunked. I hope this clears up a couple things and gives you a new perspective on the book. Maybe these are some things that you didn't know. So if it surprised you, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the notification bell, subscribe, like, all the good stuff. And for more Harry Potter deep dives, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay magical. Nox. Do you like my content? Do you like my content enough to pay for it? Well, if you want to see my Tuesday videos one day earlier, make sure to sign up for a membership so you can get that early. There are other perks and benefits for being a member, of course. Make sure to check it out and see what you like. But that is the main benefit. You get it a day early. I will start doing live streams and maybe even do live trivia just for members. But that's down the road. But if you are interested in getting videos early and some of the other perks of being a member, just check it out. You don't have to. I don't want you to. But if you're interested, I'll see you there. Let's get back to the videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to Marvelous Marauders. Today we are diving into some of the biggest misconceptions surrounding Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone that you might have heard over the years. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the series, these are things you might have gotten wrong, and I'm here to clear them up. We've got 6 misconceptions to tackle, so let's get started with the first one. First up, let's talk about a pretty common misconception, that the pieces of Hagrid's wand are hidden inside his umbrella. Now, we've all seen Hagrid carrying around his big, strange pink umbrella, and a lot of people just think it's there to hide the pieces of his broken wand. But here's the thing, the umbrella is his wand. It's not a hiding spot for it. It's just the whole thing. The whole umbrella is his wand. Now you might be wondering, why would Hagrid use an umbrella as his wand? Well, it's actually kind of smart, seeing as he shouldn't have a wand. Also, broken wands don't work. So unless they're fixed, they're just not going to do magic properly. I mean, we see how a broken wand performs magic in Chamber of Secrets. When Ron's wand does any magic, it backfires. And in Deathly Hallows, Harry breaks his wand, and when he tries to repair it with Hermione's wand, it doesn't work. But you know when it does work? When he uses the Elder Wand. And his wand works exactly as it should after that. So Hagrid's wand was probably repaired and transfigured into an umbrella by Dumbledore using the Elder Wand. It fits with the whole idea that Hagrid could still use magic despite his wand being broken. Next, let's clear up another one. When Harry first meets Quirrell in the Leaky Cauldron, people believe that Voldemort is already possessing him. Now, if you've watched the movies, there's a reason. You've seen where Harry first meets Quirrell in the Leaky Cauldron, and Quirrell doesn't shake Harry's hand and is also already wearing a turban. So, of course, fans are going to think Voldemort's already lurking behind Quirrell's turban because of the interaction. But here's the thing. That's not how it is in the book. Quirrell wasn't possessed by Voldemort from the get-go. It's only after he fails to steal the Philosopher's Stone from Gringotts that he ends up being possessed in the book. Quirrell isn't wearing the turban in the Leaky Cauldron. It isn't until the start of Term Feast when Harry remarks on Quirrell's weird accessory choice. Then during the first Defense Against the Dark Arts class, he notices that Quirrell is still wearing his turban, which is just a small hint for the later reveal. Now let's tackle one that might surprise you. Harry killed Quirrell. You probably remember the final confrontation in Sorcerer's Stone where Harry touches Quirrell and he begins to burn, ending with him turning to dust. Yeah, that's not actually how it happens. What actually happens is that Quirrell's body was pretty much destroyed from the inside out, hence why he was drinking unicorn blood. When Harry touches him, because of Lily's protection magic, it is almost forcing Voldemort out of Quirrell, which does cause immensely unbearable pain and also leaves Quirrell burnt from the magical power. But once Voldemort leaves, Quirrell's already weak and deteriorating body just can't survive anymore. It's a tragic end for Quirrell, but it's not Harry's fault. He didn't kill him. He just touched him. Here's one I find interesting. People think that Dumbledore and Snape can somehow see through Harry's invisibility cloak. This is something some people believe because of how powerful they are, and seem to know exactly where Harry is, even when he's under the cloak. But let me set the record straight. That's not the case. The truth is, Dumbledore and Snape don't have the ability to see through the cloak, or sense where Harry Potter is, technically. What they can do is sense his thoughts. Because see, both of them are very skilled legilimens. Snape, being a natural legilimens, doesn't even have to try. He can sense Harry. Meaning, they can basically read his mind. So while Harry's under the cloak, they don't see him, but they sense his thoughts. Sometimes. And that's why they seem to know where he is, even though he's hidden. So in essence, Harry's thoughts betray him. Okay, here's another big one. The idea that the Leaky Cauldron is invisible to Muggles. A lot of people think that because it's a magical pub. Muggles can't see it. But that's not the case. The Leaky Cauldron isn't invisible to Muggles. It's just not something most of them want to pay attention to. The pub is a bit rundown looking from the outside, and honestly, to a Muggle, it would seem kind of creepy. It's full of magical folk and some strange characters, so most Muggles would just avoid it. And if they went in there by accident, they'd probably leave immediately. They can see it if they want to, because Muggle-borns have to find Diagon Alley, so they have to get there somehow. Why would they want to see it? It's not the kind of place they'd naturally stumble into. So while Muggles technically can see it, they tend to ignore it. Plus, if the Leaky Cauldron was hidden to Muggles, then why would the entrance to Diagon Alley also have to be hidden in a back alley behind the Leaky Cauldron? Simple. The Leaky Cauldron is not hidden. It just has a bad reputation, which keeps the Muggles out. Finally, let's talk about the idea that if the troll had been in the dungeon, the Slytherins would have been in serious trouble. I've seen this one floating around a lot, that the Hogwarts professors don't care about Slytherins. with people thinking the troll would have killed the Slytherins if it was in the dungeons, but let's be honest here. That's not really the case. For one, the Slytherins aren't just first years. They've got older students, and those older students are capable of handling a troll. Remember, even a group of 3 first years who have no real training were able to take down a fully grown mountain troll and were able to live to tell the tale. Plus, the dungeon has multiple sections, so there's no guarantee the troll would have been in the same area that the Slytherins were going. It's a pretty big stretch to think that they would have been in immediate danger just because of the location of the troll. There you have it. 6 common misconceptions from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, completely debunked and explained. I hope it clears some things up and gives you a fresh perspective on the story. Did any of these surprise you? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more deep dives into the Wizarding World. Until next time, stay magical, Nox.